This is the original Sony 24-70 F2.8 G Master. And this is the brand new 24-70 G Master II. Straight out of the box, I'm really impressed with how much lighter and smaller this lens is in comparison to its predecessor. But the question is it worth the upgrade? Let's find out in today's review. Hey, how's it going guys? Ryan here again with another lens review, and just wanted to update you guys before we start the review of what's going on with my life and such. I have been pretty busy the last few months. I haven't really been uploading any reviews, also because I've been doing a lot of outside work as well as setting up my brand new studio, which is why I am here in a new space. And I'll just give you guys a tour a little bit later on as we go deeper into the review. But let's talk about this brand new lens right here. So it's safe to say that Sony is really updating the Holy Trinity lens. If you're unfamiliar with it, it's basically the 1635, 24-70 and 7200. So we saw the first version 2 lens of the Holy Trinity being the 7200 releasing sometime last year, and now we have the 24-70 as well. So I am guessing that Sony is definitely working on the 1635 G Master II, but I'm only keeping my fingers crossed on that as I don't have any insider news. I don't know when it's released. But let's talk a little bit more about this lens. With more of the Sony lenses coming up and releasing nowadays, we have a lot of similarities between the lenses, namely the multiple focus hole buttons as well as the aperture ring. So I think it's quite safe to say that Sony is keeping in mind filmmakers as well as videographers, because a lot of these new functions are very handy and very useful to us, but I'll dive a little bit deeper into those features in a second bit. So before that, let's talk about the design aspects of this new lens. The overall lens design is quite unique. Reason why I say that, if you take a closer look, the front element of the lens is slightly wider in terms of diameter as compared to the rest of the body of the lens, but it still maintains that same 82mm filter thread. But yeah, let's dive in a little bit more about the design aspects. You have your aperture ring, your zoom ring, as well as your focus ring, and 2 focus hole buttons which are customizable within your camera body system. This is where it gets interesting though. You have what they call a click on and off switch for your aperture. So if you prefer to have a haptic feedback when you're switching between apertures, you can actually turn that on, and it gives quite a solid click when you're switching from a different stop to another stop. Another interesting function is also the smooth and tight toggle for your zoom ring. So if you switch it to smooth, it gives you less tension. If you switch it over to tight, it's a lot harder to make that zoom. So for those of you that prefer it to be tighter so that you won't, well, maybe if you're doing video, if you want like a really slow zoom, I would say you can switch it on to tight. But other than that, the lens has a lot of the similar functions as compared to the G Master 1. You have your autofocus and stuff like that. It is also dust and moisture resistant. But since I have the G Master 1, just putting it side by side, look at the difference in size. This is a lot taller, and in terms of weight, the new 24-70 G Master II is 695 grams. That makes it almost 200 grams lighter than the original G Master 1. But look at that, man. The G Master 1 is massive. Another reason why I didn't really prefer using the 24-70 G Master 1 is also because nowadays with mirrorless bodies becoming smaller and smaller, but if you attach a big and heavy lens, it just really makes the center of gravity a lot more difficult to control. But with the new 24-70 G Master 2, I find it a lot easier to handle, and that is a plus for me. Alright, so on that note of comparing both lenses, obviously I have to take them out into the real world to test the optical performance, and let's just jump right into the photos. So all of these photos were shot with the A7 III, and I've kept the settings similar from the G Master 2 and the G Master 1. So starting off with the architecture shot, I believe this was shot on the F8. I was just trying to keep everything sharp and testing the sharpness of both these lenses. Looking at it from a wide shot, it's quite difficult to tell the difference, but if you zoom in, you can tell that the G Master 2 has a slight sharpness edge over the G Master 1 in the building edges, but that is not to say that there's really much difference in terms of the sharpness for both of these lenses. But things really start to get more interesting when we delve right into the bokeh rendition. So this photo was shot on f2.8, so I was keeping it wide open to see how well it deals with the bokeh. Bokeh is really nice on both these lenses, but I would have to say the G Master 2 handles the highlights a little bit better. Why do I say that? If you look at both of these images, for some reason the G Master II has brighter highlights in the bokeh, and that is a plus point for me. It makes the photo look more dynamic, and honestly it just brings out the flower slightly better instead of keeping it really dim. But obviously I would also love to test how round and circular the bokeh is on both of these lenses. So looking at the bokeh of this shot that I found on a random slide, so I just put the lenses there and shot it with the backdrop of like slight highlights of the sky as well as the backdrop of leaves. If you notice on the circular bokeh, the G Master I has a slight chromatic aberration that is more obvious than the G Master II, and also the edges of the bokeh are a lot sharper and more edgier, whereas the G Master II just handles it a lot better. It's more round, it's more circular. In terms of creaminess, I would say they're more or less the same, but also another difference on the G Master II is that for some reason it just handles contrast a little bit better. If you notice the slide in both of these images, the G Master I just has less saturation in the orangeness of the slide, whereas the G Master II just has a bit more of that contrast, which I really like. So this is definitely more of a personal opinion, but I would definitely say if I were to choose one of these lenses to bring out, I would say the G Master II. So I did some other photos and shot some random buildings and went out in the park. I would have to say that I'm really surprised with the optical performance of the G Master II. Shooting wide open, I was still able to get everything sharp as well as separate the foreground from the background really nicely. And in terms of the dynamic range and the colors that I can get out of the G Master II, everything was just so nice. The contrast was really, really great. And yeah, I wish I had more time with this lens. Alright, so time for me to share my personal thoughts on the 24-70 G Master II and whether it is worth the upgrade from the older predecessor G Master I. So from a optical and design standpoint, I would say the G Master II triumphs on every aspect, and you'll be happy to know that the G Master II is a cheaper lens than the G Master I. And I've got this price from the official Sony Singapore website. You will be paying $2,999 for the new lens as compared to $3,199 for the G Master I. So that is a very obvious win for me. You know, if it is cheaper, it outperforms its predecessor, I would highly recommend you checking this lens out for yourself. And yeah, it is an excellent stills and video lens. So if you are like me, a hybrid shooter, I would definitely say do check this out and test it out for yourself. So that brings us to the end of this review. I hope you have found some really useful information on whether you should upgrade from the G Master I to the G Master II, or if you're looking for a new 24-70 lens. From my personal opinion, I have shared all that I have found about the new 24-70 and definitely highly recommend you checking out. But as usual, I hope you guys enjoyed this Ryan Mamba's perspective, and I will see you guys in the next one.